Welcome back, Sebastian here. So, with a couple months to go until the start of the 2026 F1 season, I want to do a series of videos taking a look at, new regulations. And the first of those drivers, or the first of those videos, I should say, is about drivers struggling to adapt to new regulations. And this is a mix of younger drivers, but also experienced drivers as well. So first, I want to talk about the young drivers, and the first of the young drivers I want to look at is Kazuki Nakajima in 2009. So 2008, his rookie season, Formula One, his teammate was Nico Rosberg, and I have a bunch of stats here, and we're going to basically compare each of the 2 years: the year before the regulation change, and then the first year of that regulation change. So median qualifying gap to his teammate Rosberg was about 2.8 tenths of a second. Now, for 2009, this was still in the refueling era during qualifying, so drivers had to qualify on their fuel load for Q3, but not for Q1 or for Q2. So it does, slightly skew the qualifying statistics just a little bit. The quality rating for Nakajima as well, not terrible, a little bit below average, 0.057. The race results for Nakajima compared to Rosberg his first year were actually not too bad. Points were 9 to 17. And again, this was under the old point system where winner got 10 points and points only went down to 8th place. The teammate race delta, so basically the difference in race performance between the two teammates was negative 1.691, and that's basically expressed as 2 standard deviation, so basically a little bit less than a standard deviation. And then points above expected, this is converted into the 25-point system just to make it equal and make it easier to compare across errors. But points above expected was actually pretty good, 127%. Race rating, though, not great, a little bit below average, negative 0.587. And then when you get to 2009, the first year of that new regulation cycle, again, still teamed up with Rosberg, so you can get a comparison with the same teammate. Median qualifying gap gets a little bit worse by about a tenth of a second. Quality rating also a little bit worse, 0.112, but big difference in terms of race results compared to his rookie season 2008. Points, he gets none the entire season, and for Rosberg he gets 34.5 points in a good but not great Williams car. Teammate race delta, the absolutely balloons compared to the year before, negative 3.638. And of course, the negative is from Nakajima's perspective. Of course, for Rosberg, it would be the other way around. It would be a positive 3.6. Points above expected. Again, this is here where you can tell that I'm using the converted stats for the 25-point system, because of course it's not 0%, even though he actually scored 0 points that year. He got 14% of the points above expected. Or 14% of the points he was expected to that year, which is a big drop off from the year before. And race rating also fell off a cliff compared to the year before, negative 2.088. So qualifying performance is not too different, a little bit worse perhaps, but really race performances fell off a cliff, and he was let go by Williams at the end of the year. Of course, he was basically a Toyota affiliated driver, and Williams was using Toyota engines at the time. So again, it made sense that he would be teaming up with them. And of course, Toyota left at the end of the year due to the effects of the financial crisis. For Nakajima, there's not really an obvious, answer for why his results got so much worse, especially his race results. One theory that I do have is that drivers who are, I would say, good but not great, often, if they have a lot of testing prep before they make their F1 debut, they'll be pretty well prepared for a certain set of F1 cars, and then when those brand new cars come at the start of a regulation cycle without having any prior testing on those cars, maybe some of those deficits that they weren't exposed in the rookie season because of a very good testing program, maybe those gaps get exposed quite a bit in those kinds of situations. It can also be an adaptability thing where some drivers just regulation change happens. Cars require a very different way of driving it, and maybe it's very unnatural for that driver. That's another easy way to explain it. But for Nakajima, second year in F1 didn't go so well, and he was out of the sport at the end of the year. So the second example of rookie drivers, also from 2009, But I do think that there's a little bit of there's a little bit of an asterisk here with this one. And so other example from 2009 is Nelson Piquet Jr. So again, same teammate both years, Fernando Alonso both times. Of course, 2009 Piquet only lasts half the season, and we'll get into reasons why that happened in a bit. But for 2008, median qualifying gap of 0.433 seconds, positive 0.433 seconds. Quality rating a little bit below average, 0.128, but not too terrible for a rookie season. Points 19 to 61, but that is, I think, a little bit favorable compared to how Piquet was performing that year. He did get a podium at the German Grand Prix, which would have been, I think, 8 points at the time. And that's almost very close to half of his points for the season. And he really only got that podium because of a very fortuitous safety car. So again, this does kind of skew the picture a little bit for Piquet. Teammate race also pretty bad, negative 2.705. Of course, when your teammate's Alonso in his prime, it's understandable. Point above expected, honestly, not too bad for a rookie, 85%. And again, that is converted because this was under the 10-point system. Race rating also not terrible, 0.112. That's a little bit above average. And then when we get to 2009, of course, a lot of these stats basically just fall off a cliff. Of course, late in 2008, there was at the time we did not know, but it was when Crashgate happened at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. And it would be understandable if basically being asked to sacrifice your race and crash into a wall would affect your performance and affect your mental state as well. So it's possible that Piquet was had some of that lingering in the back of his mind throughout the whole of 2009. It could perhaps partially explain why his results got so much worse. So median qualifying gap basically got about a tenth and a half worse, positive 0.56 tenths of a second, 0.56 seconds. Quality rating 0.463. So again, that gets a little bit worse as well. Points, it's a much worse Renault, so points gap is technically smaller in absolute terms. Gets no point, but Alonso gets 13. But the teammate race delta absolutely balloons from negative 2.7 in 2008 up to negative 3.7 in 2009. That's one of the biggest differences, gaps between teammates in recent F1 history. Points above expected, also pretty appalling, even when converted to the 25-point system. Still only 9%, so not great there. And a race rating from a little bit above average absolutely plummets to negative 1.321. And of course, for Piquet Jr., he was let go after the Hungarian Grand Prix, which is when Spygate basically came to light. And yeah, basically never really got a shot in F1. Did have a couple okay years in Formula E. But yeah, at this point, that's really how his motorsport career went. And I think he also did some stock car racing in Brazil. But for Piquet, you can perhaps say a lot of the same things about Nakajima, and that maybe not a super talented driver, benefited from testing before 2009, brand new cars, and again some of that that talent deficiency starts to show up as well. But I think for Piquet Jr., some of that the after effects of Crashgate in Singapore 2008 also might have played a part in his performances in 2009 being really, really poor. So now moving on to the other two inexperienced drivers I wanted to talk about. The first of those two is Jolyon Palmer in 2017. So 2016 is rookie season with Renault teaming up with Kevin Magnussen. Honestly, the numbers are pretty respectable here. Median qualifying gap of basically half a tenth of a second. Quality rating of 0.123. That's a little bit below average, but still not terrible. Points for the season. This was a really poor Renault. Did get a point. And Magnussen got 7. I think 6 of those were in pretty fortuitous circumstances at the Russian Grand Prix that year, I want to say. So again, not terrible there. And teammate race delta of negative 0.404, which is honestly not bad. It's generally pretty. It suggests that they were generally pretty close in race performance. Points above expected, 40%, not great there. But when you get really, really small numbers, it's really easy for the percentage for points above expected to basically fluctuate from very, very high to 200% to very, very low, 40%, like here in Palmer's case. Race rating, again, not great, but still not terrible. Negative 0.616. But then 2017, you of course have the new cars, much higher downforce, very different. And he also has a new teammate as well in Nico Hülkenberg. Median qualifying gap that year was absolutely abysmal, one of the worst we've seen. I don't think we've actually had, for a full season, I don't think we've had a teammate gap this big. Even Stroll and Massa that same year was not this big. Median qualifying gap of 8.3 tenths of a second is quite something. Quality rating 1.141, so again goes from a little bit below average to miles off. Points 8 to 34, and again when you're getting out qualified by about almost a second every race, and you're getting knocked out in Q1 most of the time, most likely. Very, very hard to score points from there. Teammate race delta negative 1.724. Surprisingly, points above expected, not too terrible, 75%, and a race rating of negative 0.823, which is a little bit worse in 2016, not that much worse. And it really suggests that, the one lap pace basically completely disappeared. And you can even say, well, Hülkenberg's a much better driver and qualifier than Magnussen. And in fact, the two of them were teammates not too long ago. So you can actually compare how much better, Hülkenberg was compared to Magnussen. It was about, 2 tenths of a second or so. But again, that does not explain the, almost, just 8 tenths difference between his gap compared to Magnussen compared to Hülkenberg. And even if you say, well, Magnussen came back after a year out from the sport, that I still don't think is enough to cover that other, 6 tenths gap that you would supposedly have there. So Palmer's, for whatever reasons, one lap pace got a lot worse in 2017 with the new cars. And of course, he was dropped before the season was even finished. And then he went and became a pretty popular pundit on F1 TV. I think he's doing a very, very good job in that role. And I really wish I could watch him on a more regular basis, as I'm not able to watch F1 TV here in Japan. Now, last young driver that I want to talk about is Nicholas Latifi. And for Latifi, I think for some of the reasons why, in this case, 2022 was a bit of a struggle, I think a little bit similar to Nelson Piquet Jr. in the sense that I think something that happened the previous year, 2021 in this case, could have contributed to perhaps Latifi not being in the best mental state for the following season, 2022. Now, for 2021, his teammate was George Russell, median qualifying gap of about 3.4 tenths of a second, which was, not great, but still a big improvement on what Latifi had done the year before compared to Russell. Quality rating, again, as you would expect, improved from the year before in his rookie season. 0.478, still pretty bad, but it's not terrible. Points, he scored 7 that year. 6 of those 7 were at the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. A bit of a fluke result there, but, he drove a pretty good race, and he also scored points one other time. I believe that was in Spa, I want to say. But Russell did get 16 that year. A little bit fortuitous, Russell as well, with some of those points, but obviously Russell was the better of the two drivers. Teammate race delta, negative 1.867. Points what I've expected actually in the positive here for Latifi, 229%, but race rating was still below average, negative 0.801. Now, of course, in the very last race of 2021, Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, we all know what happened. Latifi crashes, fighting for position with Mick Schumacher, brings out the safety car. Safety car procedures maybe not handled in the best of ways. It changes the outcome of the race, changes the outcome of the championship. A lot of people on social media are very upset and direct a lot of very, negative, bad messages towards Latifi. And of course, Latifi is going to read some of those messages. And I think he even admitted after 2022 that the blowback from Abu Dhabi 2021 and his crash there, he said, it definitely affected me in that 2022 season. So I think, part of this is partially kind of like the mental kind of response to Abu Dhabi 2021. But I do think also, Latifi, before he made his F1 debut, he had quite a few years of, private testing, lots of free practice sessions. So he was very, very well prepared when he came in 2020. Of course, 2022, very, very different cars. They were generally considered to be more difficult to drive than 2021 in that era. So again, a lot of the numbers got a lot worse, even though I think most people would agree, got an easier teammate in Alex Albon. So median qualifying gap actually ballooned compared to what had happened to Russell the year before, about 5.2 tenths of a second. Quality rating also dropped 0.801. Points doesn't look too bad. He got 2 points compared to Albon's 4. But this was a very, very poor car that was never scoring points most of the time. And the teammate race delta kind of tells, I think, a better, more representative picture of the true differential between the two of them. Negative 2.151, which is pretty bad. That's basically over a standard deviation off of basically average, or basically like drivers being almost identical in terms of performance. Points above expected, 61%, so not awful there. But the race rating absolutely fell off a cliff. So from negative 0.8 in 2021 to negative 1.421 in 2022. So for Latifi, perhaps a little bit of both, very similar to both. Both on one side, the mental aspect, but also I think maybe just kind of getting exposed by not being able to test with the new cars. So that brings us on to our next set of drivers, and this is the experienced set of drivers. So I wanted to do 4 younger drivers, and then we're also going to do 4 experienced drivers where a lot of these drivers actually had very, very good F1 careers, great in some cases, but for whatever reason, coming into new set of cars, they did not have the best of times. Okay, so the first of the experienced drivers that I want to go over is Sebastian Vettel from 2014. Now, 2013, of course, Vettel won the championship that year, had one of the best, statistically the best single seasons in F1 history. Now, his teammate that year was Mark Webber, median qualifying gap of about 0.3 of a second in his favor. Quality rating also very, very good, negative 0.479. Not quite like absolutely elite, but still very, very, very good. Points that year, 397 for Vettel. Of course, at the time, that was a new F1 record, I believe. And Webber only scored 199. Teammate race delta, positive 2.64 in Vettel's favor. Points above expected, 120%, which is very, very good. Race rating that year, 2.526, which is actually the 4th highest ever recorded since that I've recorded since 1995. So excellent season from Vettel. So I think that for a driver who is in his prime, going into new regulations, same team though, with a new young teammate. I think that's part of the reason why what happened the following year in 2014 was so shocking. So, of course, his new young teammate was, of course, none other than Daniel Ricciardo, who, spoiler alert, will also feature in this video. His median qualifying gap that year was positive 0.16 seconds. So, basically, out-qualified by about a 10.5 by Ricciardo. Quality rating basically drops from very, very good, about negative 0.47, drops to negative 0.067, so marginally better than average. Points also loses to points head-to-head race as well. 167 points for Vettel to 236 for Ricciardo. Teammate race delta as well, negative here, negative 1.279. So it goes from dominating Webber to not quite getting dominated by Ricciardo, but definitely being beaten pretty handedly. Points above expected, 103%. So again, goes from well better than average in 2013 to barely a little bit better than what he was expected to. And race rating as well, massive collapse there, 0.310 is a little bit better than average, but still much worse than what we come to expect from Vettel during his 4 title winning years. And for Vettel, I think generally the most commonly accepted rationale for why 2014 went so poorly is that, of course, with the new engines coming in, new aerodynamics as well, they had a lot less downforce on them than basically the end of the 2013, 2012, that era of cars. And so coming in with a car that had a lot less downforce, a bit twitchier perhaps, especially on the rear. It was a car that I don't think generally meshed that well with Vettel's natural driving style. I think also it's understandable that there would be a bit of a letdown after basically winning 4 titles in a row to be completely out of a title fight for the first time, and basically you'd have to go back to 2008 for the first time that he wasn't even in the title fight as well. So again, that could have been a little bit of a mental letdown. But I think also there was kind of the sense that he was kind of throwing it in a little bit so that he could basically activate a break clause in his contract to let him go sign with Ferrari. So I think all 3 of those things kind of were part of the reasons why he had such a bad 2014. And we would eventually see later in his career, especially 2018, 2020, maybe 2019 as well. In cars, Ferraris that were a little bit less aerodynamically balanced, a little bit lower downforce. Vettel did generally tend to do worse in those cars. He did very well in the 2017 Ferrari high downforce car. 2015, even if it wasn't the fastest car, I don't think it was particularly unbalanced. And so we saw that with Vettel. There's also a bit of an adaptation issue as well, where if Vettel had a car he really, really liked, did very, very well, cars he didn't like so much, sometimes he would struggle in those. I think 2014 was a kind of another example of that happening. But nonetheless, for Vettel, at least the good news for him is that he bounced back pretty well after he went to Ferrari. 2015 was very good. 2016 was pretty good as well. 17 was also very good, and it was only really from 18 onwards that the crack started to form. So it wasn't like this was an absolute fall off a cliff and then it basically stayed really poor. He was able to rebound, and it was kind of just like a 1 year thing where it felt like maybe there's a lot of things kind of going against him that year. Now, moving on to the second driver I want to talk about, also from 2014, is Kimi Räikkönen. Now, Räikkönen's a bit of an interesting situation. He changes teammates, changes teams. 2013, of course, driving at Lotus, his teammate was Romain Grosjean, meaning qualifying gap of negative 2.4 seconds, so basically 2.4 tenths in his favor, and that was after Grosjean had actually outqualified him the year before in 2012, which suggested that maybe Räikkönen was needed a bit of time to get back up to speed after 2 years away. Quality rating is not amazing though, 0.015, which is a little bit below average, but the race performances was very, very strong in 2013. Scores 183 points to Grosjean's 114. Generally comfortably beats him in the races as well. Positive 1.365 is the teammate race delta. Points above expected 111%. That's very, very good. And a race rating of 1.451 as well. That's excellent. 2014, of course, Ferrari hired him to replace Massa because, of course, Massa had been a couple years now of not very good performances. I guess Ferrari thought, maybe Räikkönen would be a bit of an upgrade and at least give, Alonso a little bit of competition. Turns out that would not be the case and be very, very far from the truth. So up against Alonso, the median qualifying gap is quite something. It's positive 0.58 seconds, so over 5.5 tenths of a second. One of Alonso's biggest ever qualifying gaps to a teammate in basically his time in F1, which is quite something, especially given Räikkönen's a world champion and all that. Quality rating, interestingly enough, is almost identical to what it was the year before in 2013, which I think, according to the model, I guess you would infer from that that's the swing from out-qualifying Grosjean by about 2.4 tenths to being out-qualified by 5.8, 5.9 tenths of a second would be just kind of the natural difference between those two drivers. But anyway, qualifying goes very, very poorly, at least in the head-to-head with Alonso. And the race results are also very, very poor, and this is a big difference from the year before in 2013. 161 points for Alonso, 55 for Räikkönen. It's almost basically a third of his points. And teammate race delta gets absolutely obliterated, negative 3.131, one of the worst in recent F1 history. Points above expected, it's also pretty awful. It's almost in Tsunoda territory here with a 47%. 47% at least in Tsunoda territory, in the sense that it's a very low percentage and a pretty good team, even though this was a pretty poor Ferrari by their standards. Race rating also fell off a cliff, negative 1.210, which is one of the worst that season. So it goes from basically very, very strong in race performance in 2013 to absolutely very, very poor performances in 2014. Now, the 2014 Ferrari was a very bad car. It was very hard to drive. There's obviously the infamous clip of Alonso driving a car in free practice in Abu Dhabi, where it basically seemingly oversteers and understeers in the same corner. Maybe that was a bit of an exaggeration, maybe not representative of the car all the time, but nonetheless, it was a very poor car, very slow as well in the straights. And Alonso, of course, we know that Alonso was very good at getting the most out of very bad cars. And so, of course, perhaps Ferrari not being the best did kind of extenuate, make the gap between the two drivers look a little bit worse than it was. Something that, of course, has been talked about with Verstappen and pretty much all of his teammates for the last 6 or 7 years at Red Bull. So again, that's partially part of what was going on. Raikkonen, of course, going to a newish team. He had been to Ferrari before, but it could have also been that maybe, Raikkonen was just not he just did not was not really suited to the 2014 and onwards cars. It could also be that maybe he was basically performing about the same level, but was kind of that performance was kind of being masked by being teammates with Grosjean, and then switching to being teammates with Alonso. And this is something that I don't know if it will happen, but I think I could definitely see this happening to Isaac Hadjar at Red Bull this year, where it feels like maybe people will say, oh, he's had such a terrible year, much worse than last year. And in reality, it was just going from being teammates with Lawson to being teammates with Verstappen. But for Raikkonen, he would kind of bounce back in the sense that the performance differential between himself and his teammate from 2015 onwards in Vettel was never anywhere as big as it was with Alonso. So again, how much of that is it because it was Alonso he was not teammates with Alonso anymore, and how much of it was maybe the car being a little bit more tame, Raikkonen maybe getting a little bit more comfortable at Ferrari, that kind of thing. Now, going on to the last two of the drivers, quite a bit longer video than I thought it would be, but nonetheless, the last two drivers are from the most recent regulation change in 2022. Now, this first one might be a little bit unfair, and I am going to discuss Lewis Hamilton in his 2022 season. He didn't have a bad season, but when you're Lewis Hamilton, you set the bar so high, especially in race performance. I think the 2022 season was a little bit disappointing. So 2021, of course, he's in a title fight up against Verstappen, his teammate with Bottas. His median qualifying gap was negative 0.167 seconds, and his quality rating negative 0.443, so still very, very good that year. Points in terms of his teammate battle, he basically smoked Bottas pretty badly. 387.5 points compared to 226 for Bottas. Teammate race delta, positive 1.97, very, very good there. 111% of points of the points he was expected to score, so excellent there. Wasn't quite good enough for the championship, but of course that's a story of itself. And a race rating of 1.808, which is excellent. I don't know if it's top 10. I don't think it's top 10, but it's going to be definitely in the top 20 to 25 seasons all time for the data that I have going back to 1995. Then, of course, 2022 happens, and maybe a little bit like Vettel in 2014, there's a little bit of a letdown. The Mercedes isn't that quick. It's still a front-running car, but it's not really competing for the championship. And like Vettel in 2014, he has a younger, hungry driver, a hungry teammate, who, of course, this is the best car they've ever driven. So, of course, they're going to have a great time getting, podiums and 4th and 5th place finishes, whereas before they were never getting points. Of course, for Russell, he does a pretty good job, but for Hamilton, he does, even though he, of course, when you look at the points head-to-head, and we'll look at that in a second, he loses there, but he still out-qualifies Russell this first year, meeting qualifying gap of about 7.5 hundredths of a second. Quality rating, again, it does go down a little bit from 2021, but not massively, negative 0.406. Points, loses the points head-to-head 240 compared to 275, but I did think Hamilton did get quite unlucky, especially in the first half of the season, with things like poorly timed safety cars, virtual safety cars, which seemingly always seem to favor his teammate Russell. Teammate race delta, negative 0.402. So again, did lose the head-to-head there, but again, by pretty small margins. Points above expected, again, a little bit of this could be explained by, bad luck on Hamilton's side, but it is quite a big drop to go from 111% to only 96%. And race rating as well was, again, pretty good, 0.883, but still it's almost an entire point less than what it was the year before. Now, for Hamilton, I was really tempted to do a kind of like entire generation of 2022 to 2025 and then compare, age-corrected data, age and experience-corrected data from that to like last 4 years, so from like 2017 or 2018 up to 2021, and that way looking at the comparison there. Because I think more so with Hamilton than the two drivers that we've looked at before in Vettel and Raikkonen. Whereas I think for both of those cases, it was more of a one bad year, and then kind of rebounded to kind of what you would expect on more, average level. For Hamilton, it really felt like things have gotten worse and they basically stayed worse. And Hamilton and things have continued to get worse throughout this regulation cycle, basically culminating with Hamilton getting knocked out in like Q1, in like almost 4 consecutive qualifying sessions to end 2025, which is something that was unheard of even just a couple of years ago. But for Hamilton, 2022 in itself wasn't a bad year, but it was definitely a big step down from 2021, just in terms of, for example, quality ratings a bit worse, race ratings quite a bit worse. And for Hamilton, I think part of it was mental aspect, of course, coming from that high of fighting for a championship and then not being in a championship challenging car. Of course, the mental effects for losing Abu Dhabi the way he did, but he also had a bit of a tough time with the new cars as well. I think that's just the reality of it. He has generally regarded as having a really aggressive driving style, and these cars, the air ground effect cars, need to be kind of massaged almost driven in a certain way. We also know that he suffered quite a bit with the back pain and from the porpoising that plagued the Mercedes in 2022. So those are all things that definitely could have added up. And of course, since he was quite a bit older than Russell and many of the other drivers on the grid that year, he probably was a little bit worse off compared to some of the younger drivers he was racing against. Now, moving on to the last driver I want to talk about, and this is a pretty precipitous drop, again from 2022, and this is Daniel Ricciardo. So, 2021, of course, by all means, was not a great year for Ricciardo, but it did not even come close to the misery that was 2022. So 2021 teamed up with Lando Norris, qualifying. This, of course, was his first year at McLaren, I want to say. And, of course, many of the predictions going into the season were that Ricciardo was just going to absolutely smash Norris. He was going to be number one driver. Norris was going to be shown up. And, of course, that was definitely not what happened at all. So I think if you compare, recent, last 10 years or so, comparing expectation to the reality for, teammate driver perform head-to-head, this would be probably one of the more surprising ones, I would think. But median qualifying gap, positive 0.314 seconds. Quality rating a little bit better than average, negative 0.03. Points, 116 compared to his Norris's 150, I should say. But a little bit, he benefits a little bit from the fact that he wins the Italian Grand Prix that year, which is almost, like over a fifth of his points for that tally that year. And teammate race delta, again, not great. Comfortably beaten by Norris, negative 1.184. Points above expected, honestly, not too bad, negative 97%. And race rating a little bit below average of negative 0.29. Now, 2022, of course, it was a lot worse than 2021. While Ricciardo had struggled with kind of the car characteristics of just McLaren in general, it was a pretty understeery car. The way that you had to brake and turn on corner entry, turn the car on corner entry, that kind of thing, was very, very different from what he liked and from what he experienced at Renault or even Red Bull before that. And it seems those characteristics, plus maybe some of the just poor mental state throughout most of 2022, I think really hurt Ricciardo, and he just kind of went into a bit of a tailspin. Again, qualifying was not that much worse than the year before. Median qualifying gap of 3.2 tenths of a second. So again, a little bit worse than the year before, but quality rating does get a little bit worse. Goes from a little bit above average actually in 2021 to quite a bit below average, 0.27. And the points and the race results get a lot worse. 37 points for Ricciardo that year, 122 for Norris. And the teammate race delta goes from about 1, which is, you're comfortably beaten, but you're not absolutely destroyed, to getting absolutely destroyed in 2022, negative 2.718. Points above expected, also very, very bad, 60%. And a race rating that was, I believe, dead last in 2022, worse even than Nicholas Latifi, negative 1.466. Of course, for Ricciardo, last year of his contract gets bought out. He's reserve driver, test driver for Red Bull for about half a season. They throw him in after De Vries doesn't perform particularly well. He drives okay, gets injured, comes back, drives okay, then comes back for 2024, drives okay in the races. Qualifying is not great, and even against a teammate that's, I think most people would agree, is a lot worse than Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda, gets out-qualified regularly. Race performances are, about the same, but qualifying is not great. And so with a bunch of different cars, I think it was kind of just clear that Ricciardo, for whatever reason, never really liked these regulations and never really recovered either. While Hamilton had some very good years, 2023 was an excellent year for Hamilton, to be honest. And even if 24 and 25 were not so good, for Ricciardo, he never really had a great year in this regulation. 2024, he gets dropped after the Singapore Grand Prix in pretty ignominious circumstances because they need to put another driver in to figure out what they're going to do with their driver lineup. But yeah, for Ricciardo, I think partially struggles were down to poor mental state. Didn't really click with McLaren, didn't gel with the team particularly well. But I think also really struggled with the cars as well. So the question is going to be, which drivers do well, which drivers struggle with the 2026 regulations compared to kind of the baseline they've set themselves this year. I would not be surprised if you had like one experienced driver who struggles quite a bit, and then maybe also one of the I guess sophomore drivers now this year, 2026, also struggles quite a bit. Someone like Hadjar, who even if he improves or is about the same as what he did last year, I think just because he's going from a teammate who was not great and lost into being teammates with Max Verstappen, which is generally regarded as the worst spot to be in F1, it could basically make his results just look a lot worse. Maybe similar to what we saw with Palmer, a little bit similar to what we saw with Raikkonen as well. And so again, you might have that kind of situation as well, where it just kind of looks like he's struggling a lot. And some of the rookies as well might struggle. I could definitely see someone like Colapinto struggling. I could see someone like Behrman, who, even though he had a very good season, I think, this past year, he showed from his time in Formula 2 that he definitely did not have a great second year in Formula 2. And so going from pretty strong first year in Formula 2, bad second year, to really strong first year in F1 suggests that maybe there's a little bit of issues with adaptation and adaptability, and perhaps if the 2026 regulations, the cars, whatever the Haas is this year, doesn't suit his driving style, maybe he struggles a bit as well. But there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. 37 minutes of me rambling on about random numbers and all that. Wanted to discuss drivers who struggled in the first year of a new set of regulations, and perhaps some of the lessons that we can learn and apply to 2026. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.